I still remember the night I walked out of my parents' house, thinking I was walking into a better life. But that night, the sound of my mother crying still echoes in my heart. If only I had known what was waiting for me beyond that door, I would have held their hands tighter and never let go. My name is Aisha, and this is the story of how I traded my parents' love for a dream that turned into a nightmare. People say life teaches us lessons, but some lessons come too late. I grew up believing love could conquer anything. Movies, friends, social media, they all told me the same thing. Follow your heart no matter what. And I did. But what they never said is that sometimes your heart can lead you straight into your own destruction. It all began 2 years ago, in a small apartment in Dhaka City where I lived with my parents. My father worked in a bank, quiet and strict, but kind. My mother stayed at home, soft-spoken, always praying, always worried for me. I was their only child, their world. But like most daughters my age, I thought I knew better. I wanted freedom, excitement, and adventure, not the boring life my parents lived. I was 22 when I met Rayhan. He wasn't like anyone I had ever known. Confident, charming, full of dreams. He drove a black car, wore branded clothes, and talked like he had life all figured out. He made me feel seen, special, alive. At first, I didn't even tell my parents about him. I knew they wouldn't approve. Baba doesn't understand love, I told myself. He's too old-fashioned. This is my life. But deep down, I could hear my mother's voice. Be careful, Aisha. Not every smile is honest. Not every dream is real. I ignored her. I wish I hadn't. Before Rayhan came into my life, things were simple, painfully simple, or so I thought. Every morning, I'd wake up to the smell of my mother's paratha frying in the kitchen. She would call from downstairs, Aisha, wake up. You'll be late again. I'd groan, roll over in bed, and mutter, 5 more minutes, Ma. She'd laugh, but I could always hear the care behind her words. My father would already be at the dining table, neatly dressed, reading the newspaper, his glasses sliding down his nose. He wasn't the type of man who said, I love you aloud, but his love was in the way he'd keep the best piece of fried fish for me, or the way he'd wait until I reached home before locking the gate at night. We weren't rich, but we were happy. I had a small circle of friends, a degree almost finished, and parents who would do anything for me. But back then, that wasn't enough for me. I'd scroll through Instagram, seeing girls traveling, wearing designer clothes, dining at expensive cafes, and I'd wonder why my life couldn't look like that. Why couldn't I have what they had? Why did my father's rules feel like chains? He'd say things like, Aisha, come home before sunset. No talking to strangers. Life isn't a movie. But to me, it sounded like he didn't trust me. Now, when I think of it, I realize he wasn't trying to control me. He was trying to protect me. Still, at that time, I felt trapped. I wanted more. It was during my internship at a marketing agency when I first saw him. Rayhan, tall, confident, and always surrounded by people who laughed at every word he said. He had this magnetic energy. When he walked into a room, everyone noticed. And when he looked at me for the first time, it felt like the world stopped. Hey, you're new here, right? He asked with that charming half-smile. I nodded shyly, pretending to be busy with my laptop, but that was the beginning. Within days, we started talking more. About work, about life, about dreams. He told me he wanted to start his own company, to travel the world, to make a name for himself. And for the first time in my life, I met someone who didn't talk about rules or boundaries. He talked about possibilities. He'd say things like, you're too special to live an ordinary life. Aisha, your parents are good people, but they don't understand your potential. Those words were like honey to my ears. Sweet, addictive, and dangerous. He made me feel like I was someone extraordinary. And slowly, I began to see my parents as the reason I wasn't free. It started small. I told my parents I had to stay late at the office for a project. In truth, I was at a rooftop cafe with Rayhan, laughing over coffee as the city lights flickered below us. He reached across the table and held my hand for the first time. My heart raced, not just from love, but from guilt. That night, when I came home, my mother was waiting by the door. "You didn't pick up my calls." I was so worried. I remember snapping, "Ma, I'm not a child. I can take care of myself." Her eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. She just walked away. That silence, it should have been a warning. But instead, I felt relief. I told myself, I deserve this. I deserve to live my own life. And from that day, the distance between us began to grow. Looking back, I can't help but wonder how many times my mother stayed awake, praying for me while I was out laughing with Rayhan. How many times my father wanted to call me but stopped, not wanting to sound controlling. They loved me more than I ever realized, and I repaid that love with lies. If only I knew that every lie I told was building the wall that would one day keep me from coming home again. The next few months felt like a dream, every day. Rayhan and I grew closer. We talked for hours, sometimes about life, sometimes about nothing at all. He had a way of making even the ordinary feel magical. A walk in the rain became a movie scene. A cup of tea at a roadside stall felt like luxury. And when he looked at me, it felt like the whole world disappeared. I thought I had found the one. He'd say things like, "One day we'll have our own place." No one to tell us what to do, just us, Aisha, free and happy. Every word made my heart flutter. It was exactly what I wanted to hear. I started dreaming about a life with him. A small apartment, laughter, freedom, and love. But love isn't just about dreaming. It's about reality. And reality was something I refused to see. Rayhan was ambitious. Too ambitious sometimes. He'd talk about big business ideas, quick money, and how the world was unfair to people like him. At first, I admired his drive, but soon small cracks began to show. He'd get angry easily, at waiters, at traffic, at anyone who disagreed with him. Sometimes, when I said something he didn't like, he'd go silent for hours. And then, he'd come back with gifts, a perfume, a bracelet, a phone cover. Little things that made me forget the uneasiness in my heart. "You overthink too much," he'd say with a smile. "I just want the best for us." And I'd believe him. Every single time. One evening, my father came home early and saw Rayhan dropping me off near our street. He didn't say anything that night, but I knew he had seen. The next morning, he called me into his study, a quiet room filled with books and old family photos. "Aisha," he said calmly, "who is that boy?" I froze. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely think. "He's just a colleague." "Baba," I lied. He looked at me for a long time, the kind of look that sees right through you. "I'm not against your happiness," he said softly, "but I need you to be careful. The world isn't always kind to good hearts." I nodded, pretending to listen. Inside, I was angry. Why couldn't he just trust me? Why did every father have to be so old-fashioned? That night, I texted Rayhan in frustration. "My father doesn't understand us. He'll never approve." Rayhan replied instantly, "Then why live under his control? You're not a little girl anymore, Aisha. You deserve your own life." Those words hit hard. They sounded right. And that's when the idea first entered my mind. The idea of leaving home. Over the next few weeks, I started pulling away from my parents. I spent less time at home, avoided family dinners, and stopped sharing things with them. My mother noticed. She'd come to my room late at night and say, "Aisha, are you okay? You're changing. I feel like I'm losing you." And I'd smile and say, "Ma, I'm fine. Don't worry so much." But I wasn't fine. I was falling deeper into Rayhan's world, a world of excitement and risk, where everything felt thrilling and dangerous at the same time. One evening, as we sat by the lake, watching the city lights dance on the water, Rayhan took my hand. "Aisha, I can't live like this anymore. Meeting in secret, hiding from your parents. Let's leave, start a new life together." I was shocked. "Leave?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yes," he said. "I found a small apartment. I can afford it for now. Once my business takes off, We'll have everything we ever dreamed of. My heart raced. It felt crazy, unreal, dangerous. But then he looked into my eyes and said, "Do you love me or not?" That question, it felt like a test. And in that moment, I chose love over everything else. I whispered, "Yes, I love you," and that was it. My decision was made. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to my parents talking in the next room. "She's been so quiet lately," my mother said softly. "Give her time," my father replied. "She'll find her way." Tears rolled down my face as I realized how much they loved me. But I had already promised Rayhan, and I couldn't turn back. If I had known that, walking out of that house would be the last time I'd see my father smile, the last time my mother would bless me before bed. I would have held on to them just a little longer, but I didn't. I chose love over family, and that choice changed my life forever. The morning I left home, the sky was strangely quiet. No birds, no breeze, just that heavy silence that comes before a storm. I remember packing my small suitcase while my hands trembled. My mother was in the kitchen, humming softly as she cooked breakfast. My father was reading the newspaper, just like every other day. They had no idea that by the time they finished their morning tea, I would be gone. Before leaving, I placed a short note on the dining table. It said, "Baba, Ma, I'm sorry. I love you both, but I have to follow my heart. Please trust me. I'll be fine." My handwriting was shaking. I wanted to write more, but the tears blurred the words. I quietly wheeled my suitcase out the door, closing it behind me without looking back. When I stepped outside, Rayhan was waiting in his car. He smiled, his eyes full of pride, and I tried to smile back, though my heart felt like it was breaking. "You did the right thing," he said as we drove away. "From now on, it's just us." The city blurred past the window, but all I could see in my mind was my parents' faces when they'd find my note. Would they cry? Would they forgive me? I wanted to believe that one day they would. Rayhan's apartment was small, but neat. A single bedroom with a balcony overlooking the noisy street below. To me, it felt like freedom. We spent hours decorating the place together, hanging fairy lights, buying cheap furniture, laughing like children building their first home. For the first time, I could stay out late, eat what I wanted, and talk to whoever I liked. I told myself, this is love. This is happiness. Rayhan was sweet, attentive, always planning new adventures. He'd surprise me with street food at midnight, take me on long drives and whisper, "You see, Aisha, I told you we could make our own world." I believed him. Completely. After the first month, reality started knocking. Rayhan's business plans weren't as solid as he made them sound. He'd spend hours on his laptop, frustrated, saying things like, "People don't see my talent. The world's unfair." Our savings started shrinking. Rent was due. Sometimes we'd argue about money, but I always tried to calm him down. "It's okay. We'll manage," I'd say. "I can find a job. I'll help." At first he resisted. "No, you don't have to work. I'll take care of everything." But weeks passed, and his temper grew shorter. Small things started turning into big fights. One evening, I came home a bit late from a job interview. Rayhan was sitting in the dark, scrolling through his phone. "Where were you?" he asked coldly. "I told you I had an interview," I replied. He slammed his phone on the table. "You didn't pick up my calls." I sighed. "Rayhan, I was in the middle of the interview. I couldn't." "You couldn't? Or you didn't want to?" That was the first time I saw the anger in his eyes. Sharp, cold, almost unfamiliar. He didn't yell. He just walked out of the room, leaving me sitting there with my heart pounding. I told myself, he's just stressed. It's nothing. But deep down, something inside me began to crack. Over the next few weeks, things changed. Rayhan started spending more time outside. Sometimes he'd say he was meeting clients, other times friends. When I asked who, he'd snap, "Why do you always question me? Don't you trust me?" I wanted to trust him. I really did. but the warmth that once filled our tiny apartment was slowly fading. He stopped calling me my sunshine. He stopped holding my hand when we crossed the street. And one night, when I tried to hug him from behind, he gently moved my arms away. That hurt more than any fight ever could. One evening, as I sat alone in the dimly lit room, my phone rang. It was Ma. My chest tightened. For weeks, I hadn't heard her voice. I couldn't. I was too ashamed. I watched the phone vibrate on the table. I wanted to answer, to tell her I was okay, to hear her say my name. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at the screen until the call ended. That moment still haunts me. The sound of silence where love used to be. Days turned into weeks, and the laughter we once shared vanished completely. Rayhan became distant, secretive. Sometimes he wouldn't come home until late at night. I'd stay awake, staring at the door, praying he was safe, and that he still loved me. But somewhere deep inside, I knew the man I fell in love with was no longer there. I began to miss my parents, the sound of my mother's prayers at dawn, the way my father would call my name softly from the other room. And for the first time, I wondered, did I really choose love, or did I just choose loneliness? I thought leaving my parents made me strong, but the truth is, it made me weaker than I ever imagined. I was alone, and the person I gave everything to was slowly slipping away from me. It had been 6 months since I left home. 6 months since I heard my parents' voices. 6 months since I thought I had found my happily ever after. But happiness has an expiry date when it's built on lies. At first, I kept believing Rayhan was just going through a rough phase. His work wasn't stable. His plans weren't working. I told myself it was stress. Love means patience, right? So I waited, but waiting turned into worry. And worry turned into fear. One afternoon, I went to a cafe near his office to surprise him. It was our anniversary. 6 months since we moved in together. I bought his favorite pastry and waited by the window. When he walked in, I smiled, but my smile froze when I saw her. A girl, tall, stylish, laughing loudly, walked in right beside him. They sat together, too close. He leaned in and whispered something that made her giggle. My heart sank. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to walk away, but my legs refused to move. Instead, I sat there, hidden behind a pillar, watching the man I loved act like a stranger. They stayed there for an hour, laughing, touching hands, sharing food. It was everything we used to do. When they left, I followed quietly, my mind spinning, my heart breaking with every step. When he came home that night, I was sitting on the couch, still in the clothes I wore that morning. "Where were you?" I asked. "Work," he replied casually, tossing his keys on the table. "Really?" I whispered, "because I saw you at the cafe. With her." He froze. For a moment the mask slipped, just a flash of guilt in his eyes. But then he laughed bitterly. "You were spying on me?" "Aisha, this is pathetic. Who is she, Rayhan?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "A client," he snapped. "Don't make everything about your insecurities." His words hit like knives, and before I could speak again, he stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. I sat there for hours, staring at the empty plate on the table, the pastry I had bought now stale and untouched. From that day, something changed permanently. We stopped talking like before. He'd leave early, come home late. And when he did, his phone was always in his hand. I stopped asking questions, because every answer hurt more than silence. The apartment that once felt like love now felt like a cage. Every corner reminded me of the dreams we once shared. Dreams that were fading faster than the paint on our walls. One night, Rayhan came home angry, something about a failed deal, about people not understanding him. I tried to calm him down. "It's okay, Rayhan. We'll figure this out. Stop saying that," he shouted. "You don't understand anything. You're just sitting here doing nothing while my life falls apart." His words echoed in the small room. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I stayed silent. Then, without another word, he grabbed his jacket and walked out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I sank to the floor, sobbing quietly, and for the first time I whispered to myself, maybe I made a mistake. A week later, I got a message from an unknown number. "Aisha, this is your mother. Please come home. Your father isn't well." I stared at the screen for a long time, my hands shaking. It had been months since I heard from them. Part of me wanted to run home immediately, to see my father, to hold my mother, but another part whispered, "You can't. You chose this. You can't just walk back." Rayhan came home while I was still crying quietly over the message. When I showed him, he barely looked up. "If you go back now," he said coldly, "don't expect me to be here when you return." I froze. "Rayhan, my father is sick. Everyone's parents get sick. Aisha, you can't keep running back every time something happens." That night, I realized something terrible. He didn't love me anymore. Maybe he never did. I sat by the window the whole night, staring at the empty streets below, and I thought about the last time I saw my father's face, his tired eyes, his quiet smile. I thought about how I had traded the warmth of my parents' home for this cold apartment, filled with arguments and regret, and for the first time I wanted to go home. But I was too scared. Scared of rejection, scared they wouldn't take me back, scared they'd say, "We told you so." The next morning, I made a decision. I packed a small bag, just the essentials. I didn't know if I was going back home for good or just to see my father once. When Rayhan saw me packing, he smirked. "So that's it? You're running away now?" I looked him in the eyes and said quietly, "No, Rayhan, I'm finally going home." He didn't stop me. He didn't even look back when I closed the door behind me. And that silence, that cold, final silence, told me everything I needed to know. The man I left everything for wasn't worth losing my family for. As I walked down the road, I felt the weight of my mistakes on every step, every lie, every fight, every tear, all leading to this moment. I didn't know what awaited me at home. Forgiveness, or a door closed forever. But I knew one thing. Whatever happened next, I had to face it. I had to face the consequences of choosing love over blood. When I reached my parents' house, everything looked smaller, quieter. The garden that once bloomed with bright flowers now looked dry and lifeless. The paint on the gate was chipped, and the air felt heavy, as if the house itself carried the weight of disappointment. I stood there for a long time, afraid to knock. What if they didn't want to see me? What if I had hurt them too much? But before I could gather the courage, the door opened. My mother stood there, older, thinner, her eyes tired but still soft. For a moment, she just stared. Then her hands trembled as she whispered, "Aisha?" And before I knew it, she was holding me, tightly, desperately, like she was afraid I'd vanish again. I couldn't stop crying. All the guilt I'd been carrying spilled out in that one moment. "I'm sorry, Ma. I'm so sorry." She didn't say anything for a while. She just stroked my hair and whispered, "You're home. That's all that matters." When I entered his room, my heart broke. My father was lying in bed, weak and pale. His once strong hands now trembled when he reached for mine. "Baba," I whispered, kneeling beside him. He opened his eyes slowly, tired, but filled with tears. "Aisha," he said softly, "you came back." I couldn't stop crying. "I'm sorry, Baba." "I should have listened." He smiled faintly. "No, my child. Everyone has to learn their own way. Sometimes love teaches us through pain." His words cut deep because I knew how true they were. For the next few weeks, I stayed home helping my mother, taking care of my father, and trying to piece myself back together. But even as peace returned, guilt never left. I couldn't stop replaying everything in my mind. The fights, The betrayal. The choices. At night, I'd lie awake, wondering how I had been so blind, how I mistook control for care, how I confused attention for love. Every morning, I'd watch my parents smile at me, but behind their eyes, I could see the unspoken question, "Will you leave again?" And I had no answer. One evening, as I was folding laundry, my phone buzzed. It was Rayhan. My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, I thought, maybe he missed me. Maybe he wanted to fix things. But when I opened the message, my hands turned cold. "Aisha, I think we need to talk. Please don't ignore me." Against my better judgment, I replied, "What is there to talk about, Rayhan? You made your choice." A few minutes later, he called. I stared at the phone before answering. His voice sounded different. Weak. Desperate. "Aisha, please. Everything's falling apart. I lost my job. She left me. I don't have anyone else." I stayed silent, because deep down, I knew this wasn't love. This was karma. He began talking fast, like he needed to pour everything out. I messed up. "Aisha, I thought I was smarter, that I could handle everything. But I was wrong. That girl I was seeing, she used me, took my money, my contacts, everything. Now I'm broke." I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. Just emptiness. Because this was the man I had chosen over my parents. The man I had given everything to. Trust. Love, loyalty. And now he was calling me because everyone else had left him. "Aisha, please," he begged. "Come back. I can't do this alone." My voice was calm when I answered. "Rayhan, I did everything I could for you. I gave up my family for you. And what did you give me? Lies, pain, silence." He was quiet. Then he whispered, "I made a mistake." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. So did I. But mine cost me more than you'll ever understand. And I hung up. That night, I deleted his number for good. Over the next few months, I focused on my parents. My father's health slowly improved. My mother smiled more often. The house started to feel alive again, and inside me, something healed too. Rayhan tried contacting me again a few times, from new numbers, through messages, but I never replied. I didn't need to, because karma had already done its job. It didn't need my help. Tone turns reflective and emotional. One morning, I sat with my father in the garden. He looked at me and said, "You've changed. Aisha, there's strength in your eyes now." I smiled softly. "Maybe heartbreak teaches us strength." "Baba," he nodded. "Or maybe love isn't about who we choose, but who stays when everything else falls apart." His words stayed with me, because that's when I finally understood. My parents were the ones who stayed. Through my mistakes, my silence, my rebellion, they never gave up on me. Sometimes, I wonder what my life would have been like if I hadn't left. Would I have been happier? Would my father have stayed healthy? But then I remember, if I hadn't fallen, I would have never learned how to rise. Rayhan was a chapter in my life, not the whole story, and every painful chapter still teaches something. Love, I learned, isn't about butterflies or promises. It's about peace, the kind that doesn't disappear when times get hard. And most of all, it's about the people who stand by you when the world turns its back. That day, as the sun set behind our old house, I finally felt free. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had made peace with my choices. I had left for love, and lost everything. But when I returned, I found something far greater. Forgiveness, family, and myself, and maybe that was karma's real gift. Months passed. The seasons changed. Life at home slowly found its rhythm again. I started helping my father with small things, reading to him, walking with him in the garden. My mother smiled more often, her laughter filling the rooms that once echoed with silence. And yet, a quiet shadow remained inside me, a question I couldn't shake off. What happens to people like Rayhan? Do they ever realize what they've done? I didn't want revenge. Not anymore. But part of me wanted closure, an ending. One morning, while I was cleaning my room, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Aisha, this is Imran. You don't know me, but I used to work with Rayhan. He's in a bad situation. Please, if you can, come to City Hospital. He keeps asking for you. My heart stopped for a moment. City Hospital. Rayhan. I didn't know what to do. A part of me said, don't go. He's your past. But another voice whispered, sometimes forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. So I went. When I entered the hospital room, I barely recognized him. The man who once spoke with confidence and charm now looked fragile. His eyes hollow, his body weak. He looked up slowly. When our eyes met, time seemed to pause. Aisha, he whispered. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavier than words. Finally, I said softly, why did you call me, Rayhan? He sighed, his voice trembling. Because you're the only one who ever truly cared. Everyone else, they were here for what I could give. When I lost everything, they vanished. I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see the man who betrayed me. I saw someone broken, someone paying the price of his choices. He continued slowly, his eyes wet with regret. I thought love was about control, about power. I didn't realize it was about peace until I lost you. Aisha, I ruined everything. I used people. I lied to them. And in the end, I only destroyed myself. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. He looked down, his voice cracking. I heard your father's unwell. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. For taking you away from your family. For hurting you. For a second I saw the boy I once fell for. Not the manipulator. Not the betrayer. Just a human being who had finally realized the truth too late. I stood beside him quietly. The past flashed through my mind. The laughter. The fights. The tears. The night I left home. Then I said softly, I forgave you a long time ago, Rayhan. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It just means I've stopped carrying your weight. He closed his eyes and nodded, tears rolling down his cheeks. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Aisha, I smiled faintly, then I hope you remember that, and never repeat the same mistake again, with anyone. I left the room quietly, not looking back. That was the last time I ever saw him. A few weeks later, I heard that Rayhan had left the city. No one knew where he went. And I didn't need to know, because some people aren't meant to stay in our lives. They're just meant to teach us what love should not be. Slowly, I started rebuilding my own life. I found work at a small community center, helping young women who were going through heartbreak, confusion, and emotional struggles. Each time one of them cried and said, I left my home for love and now I have nothing. I'd smile gently and reply, you still have yourself, and that's where your healing begins. One evening, I returned home after work and found my father sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. He looked at me and smiled. You've grown into a wise woman. Aisha. I sat beside him. Maybe I just made too many mistakes. Baba, he chuckled softly. Mistakes aren't the problem. Not learning from them is. Then he held my hand and said something I'll never forget. When you left, I was angry. But when you came back, I realized pain can break you, or it can build you. You chose to build. Tears filled my eyes. Because for the first time, I wasn't the girl who ran away. I was the woman who came home stronger. Sometimes in life, we chase the wrong kind of love. The one that blinds us, consumes us, and pulls us away from the people who truly care. But when everything falls apart, the universe finds its way to bring us back, not to punish us, but to teach us. Rayhan was my lesson, my parents were my blessings, and karma. Karma was just life's way of balancing the scales. I left home for love and came back with wisdom. And now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone who finally understands what real love is. Not the one that takes you away from yourself, but the one that brings you back home. Sometimes, Losing everything is how you find who you truly are.